Welcome to the Noble Ape Podcast, Ape Reality. I'm Tom Barbalet, and this serves as the February 2008 Mailout. It serves as the February 2008 Mailout primarily because I've got a lot of stuff going on currently, and towards the end of this month I have a family member in town, which is a very, very rare thing indeed for me, so I thought I'd best get the Mailout out early. So the two big pieces of news, very similar to last month, are the continuation of Biota Live, which is an interesting process really, recording Biota Live, because the folks listening to the Biota podcast have changed quite dramatically, I think, since Biota Live started. I think we've lost a number of folks and possibly gained a few more, but it's an interesting format in terms of nurturing a community, and I think for this reason, and this reason alone, Biota Live will continue on in the form that it is currently, although I'm going to take a couple of weeks off with the family member in town. In terms of the dialogue, I think the interesting part has been the introduction of new folks into the dialogue stream in some regard. Obviously, Justin Line has come through very strongly in the recent recordings. He's now introducing friends into the feed, and having people like Jeffrey Ventrella as communicating participants is always a positive thing. I'd like to actually see more people get involved. My hope is that some of the Greytham folk will get involved progressively, because it'd be nice to hear their voices in the mix as well. But a number of topics discussed so far in Biota Live, and a number of topics in the future to discuss. I think what's happening with each recording is that more ideas and topics are coming up which can be covered in future recordings. The format is relatively loosely held together, which makes it easier for certain topics to come up when other topics are being discussed. So a nice format seems to be working, will be continuing in the future. The other thing that's been going on is obviously the Dick Gordon book project, which seems to be kind of continuing on even though deadlines are set and deadlines seem to be passed, but I think it's just the nature of gathering together the texts and the participants. I'm somewhat disappointed that I haven't had any other dialogue with folks I've contributed dialogue to, and moreover, there don't seem to be a lot of folks that are actually contributing dialogue into the artificial life related discussions, which I'm a bit ho-hum about. I think obviously the nature of this kind of book is that the intelligent design folk and their particular adversaries are going to duke it out in their own sections, and the discussions with regards to artificial life just seem to be relatively secondary. It is what it is, it will be what it will be, and in that regard I'm having a bit of fun with it. In terms of Noble Ape development, I'd like to get a new version of the simulation out once the Dick Gordon book situation has kind of calmed down. There's no sign of that in the probably next 2 weeks to a month time frame. Unfortunately, I think the simulation is suffering currently, if that could be the case. I think the change in listenership with regards to Ape Reality and also the Biota podcast seems to almost put them on par now. It seems to me that there's been a movement of folks from the Biota podcast over to Ape Reality, and if that is the case, please get in contact Tom at nobleape.com. It's a relatively kind of amorphous and faceless mass in terms of the folks that are actually listening to both podcasts. So if there's any way of tracking these people, or if there's any way of actually tailoring the podcasts more to what they want to hear, so much the better. Obviously, the number of Ape Realities has suffered quite dramatically in recent months, associated in part with Biota Live, but also in part with a lack of free time to work on Ape Reality versus, for example, developing Noble Ape-related code. So these priorities have been there for probably, 3 months now, and will continue on probably for another couple of months till the Dick Gordon book project is resolved and other things are resolved and I'm back into some kind of development stream. I don't know whether Biota Live will continue in the weekly format. It seems to be very productive in the weekly format, although the feedback that I have received from the hardcore listener base is that there is possibly too much audio that's being recorded currently and people are finding it hard to keep up with it all. So for this reason, I'm going to keep this Ape Reality mail out relatively short. If you have any questions, any comments, any feedback, Tom at nobleape.com. The final piece of news is obviously the Google situation has resolved itself if you've travelled by the Noble Ape site in the past few weeks, and in the short term I'm going to have to modify the site a little bit to kind of tone down the Google blocking related stuff and move the site more towards something that people are immediately receptive to when they come to it, because obviously there's a lot of traffic interchange between the Biota site and the Noble Ape site currently. Most of the stuff that I talk about is covered in the Biota podcast now, so if you're one of the 2 or 3 folks that listen to this podcast and not the Biota podcast, I recommend you move over to biota.org/podcast, subscribe, and get a sense of what's going on over there, because currently it's taking a lot more of my time than I can put into the Ape Reality podcast. But next month, maybe more podcasts, maybe more interesting podcasts. If Justin Line comes through Las Vegas, I may actually record him for an Ape Reality versus a Biota, but who knows, maybe it'll go on the Biota feed, who knows. Thank you very much for tuning into this podcast. Look forward to you tuning into the next podcast.